Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday night, February 4th, 2016. Welcome to Sacred Cow BBQ. I'm Patricia Aiken, an average host with exceptional guests. I think you'll appreciate meeting some of my guests this evening. Joining us tonight is a man you've been getting to know. That's Gavin. He's been assisting Ammon and Company in keeping the message focused and on target. Welcome back, Gavin.
Hey, good to be here.
All right, awesome. Yes, I sure can. You sound good.
Mike, from some audio echo feedback there.
Okay, let me turn things down here, and then we'll see how we do. I just wanted to bring that up a second. All right. And also, Mike from the Carolinas is joining the discussion tonight. His roots go back to colonial New England. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Patricia. Hi, Gavin.
Hey, Mike. Good to be here.
All right. If you can talk, you're going to have to talk just a little bit louder to even it out here tonight, Mike, if you would. And finally, we have a north of the border perspective from freedom-loving Drew. He archived a gajillion of Clint Richardson's shows, or at least it probably seemed like that many, and is one of my favorite barbecue correspondents. Finally, welcome to the barbecue, Drew.
Thank you very much for having me. Howdy, guys.
Okay, awesome. Listen, a topic that I hope we'll have time for after we get to today's travesty in Portland by the Black Robe, the dissension in the Patriot movement, the Monday morning quarterbacking. I want to hope we'll get a chance to cover that. So much tyranny, so little time. Solitary confinement for Ammon Bundy. Got to shut that good man up. He can't even be allowed to talk to the rest of the people in the damn jail. So, Gavin, what do you think of the judge that won't release Ammon Bundy on bail because she says he won't show up for court and then doesn't let any of the defendants into the grand jury proceedings?
You know, it's typical of a nation of bureaucratic terrorism, and I think that people have really, across America, patriots are really not quite up to speed yet. They don't recognize that the courts are kind of the head. You know, they look at Obama, they look at Congress, but really the greatest terrorists in this nation, really the greatest terrorists in the world. You know, while we all bicker and fight about the borders, which, yes, should be secure and immigration should be streamlined, but secure, we should know who's coming across our borders. But while we fight about ISIS and this and that, who, of course, the government is behind, the real and greatest threat to the security of this people, and I don't say a free people because we are no longer free, the greatest threat to this nation and the greatest shackle on our children is the courts. And so all the way down to the county level, I mean, right down to Judge Grasty in Harney County, our federal courts, I've been tried by a jury of my not peers. I've seen the kangaroo court numerous times. I know what goes on here. And I know that the law has absolutely nothing to do with what happens in these courts. And people still have this mindset, and we must end this mindset. It's time to if you don't believe me, just wait till you get arrested. There's this mindset still of, well, you know, yeah, it's getting bad, but at least we still have the court and we can still be, you know, get a jury of our peers. And I would rather be, tried by 12 than carried by 6 kind of mindset. The reality is there's very little difference, and you don't get a jury of your peers. You don't get the fundamental foundation of your rights at all. So the law is gone in the courts, and we're getting to the point where lawyers that actually understand law and constitution, they're quitting. I mean, those of us that defend the Constitution, that know the laws, that know our rights, we're far more lawyers than most of the lawyers in these courtrooms. It's not about law. It's not about justice. It's about protocol, manipulation, games, lies, extortion, and power.
Woe unto you, lawyers. Absolutely.
Yes.
Mike, you got a response to this?
Yeah, he's hitting right on it. And what we really have is the courtrooms actually are nothing but a carnival. We've been invited to their free-wing circus, and it's all about money, how to control and make money. I'm hearing out here in the grasslands that what's happening is that when you get in trouble and you get arrested, well, the first thing you want to do is get yourself a lawyer, and he's going to protect you and help you. Well, first thing they want to do is, well, how much retainer can you give me? Just to get a divorce, they want $5,000 retainers right off the get-go, and they don't have to do anything about it. It's a con game, and there are a few out there that are doing a good job, but the rest of them are just laying back and taking in the money, putting in their offshore accounts, and they're doing whatever they're told to do. If they go against the judge, then they're not going to be practicing in there very much longer.
No, they're all agents of the court. Drew?
That's correct.
Drew?
Yeah, I thought Canada was corrupt, but this blows me away. I think it's quite illustrative that in the UK and in Scotland, barristers are called devils, and their courses they're called devil masters, and I think that's very fitting.
Really, devil masters. Yeah, that really is fitting. The courts, we have to get the rule of law back. Gavin, this grand jury indictment, without all the charges, they sealed the charges. You know why they sealed the charges? Because they're still concocting them. Right.
And I think, all the way down, these grand juries have become just a total sham, so they can give the people this feel of, you're involved in the process. And let's have a common law grand jury and see what people that understand that say on this. Let's start having real juries. But I want to pause for a second. I want to come out a little bit in defense of the lawyer. And because I'll take the opposite point just for a moment. You see, we've gotten to this point. It's easy to blame the lawyers. For heaven's sake, Jesus said, "Woe unto you lawyers." And so obviously we have these lawyers and judges and they're corrupting America. But really this falls directly on the heads of the people. The few lawyers I know that understand the Constitution. My attorney, to go in there and be able to help people, he has to play their game to a degree. It's true. But part of his argument is the Bar Association is unconstitutional. All of this stuff is a total sham, and he knows it. And what I see is that the few lawyers that do know how to fight, the first thing people say when they're a lawyer is, "Oh, you're part of the problem." And no, the people are the problem. Our unrighteousness and apathy is the problem. The reason we have things like bar associations is because the people refused to rein in government. Can you imagine, because the Bar Association wasn't around in 1790 when we just introduced the Constitution. So somebody like me would have been an attorney. See, we've come to this point where we say, well, an attorney is somebody who's a member of the bar. That has nothing to do in any moral or lawful sense with somebody who is an attorney, who is a representative, a defender of law. And so what's come of our legal system is a total sham, but once again, it falls on a lazy, apathetic people who are more concerned about movies and football and entertainment than they are about controlling the government that they created.
Exactly, and we've fallen for that hook, line, and sinker. We do have to number ourselves with the transgressors, and we all wake up in different stages.
Right.
Back to you, Mike.
Well, Gavin, you're right again. Actually, the big problem we're having is that it's not happening to me. It's not happening unless it's happening to me. That's the attitude right there.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
It's actually beginning to happen to more people now, Gavin. We're beginning to find out because this year there are thousands upon tens of thousands of layoffs on their way right now. It's getting to be to a point where we don't have you brought up the word Constitution, but see, we're not under the Constitution. And that's where you have to decide, do you want to go back to it, or do you want to change what we have? Probably, if you make an attempt to change what we have, you got to muster out all those people who are in there right now, because when this economy collapses, the same people are going to be there saying, "Oh man, here's some money I can lend you right here. Let's go right back into the same situation." So that whole tribe that's in charge of this whole mess need to be eradicated. They need to leave. You can't let them be in charge of anything any longer. It's obvious what they've done here. It's obvious what they've been doing the last 2,000 years. The writing's on the wall. Their reputations precede them, and you got to get them out. There's no more allowing them to be in charge of anything. That's it. They're done enough with.
Well, I had a great conversation today, folks, with as someone that's really working real hard on this common law grand jury thing, and he'll be a guest with us next week. But we were talking about how our government, that government that the founders set up, and these state governments, they're all still here. They're just vacant. Those offices are empty, and it's been taken over by these corporate fictions that are masquerading as the government.
Right. Well, and we people need to understand that we are not a nation under a constitution anymore. The Constitution is openly and completely ignored. And if that hasn't become clear over the past week to people, I don't know how much more loss do you have to have before you wake up. That doesn't mean the Constitution isn't law, but I want to go beyond that, and I always do, because people call me a constitutionalist because I say, hey, you guys need to follow the Constitution. The Constitution is just the wall to hold the government back. The Constitution is really the alarm that the wall of liberty has been breached. And when it's breached, that alarm starts ringing. But what people don't understand, and we've allowed this lie to persist, is, and I see this among patriots all the time. I used to think that way not so long ago. We've allowed this lie of constitutional rights to persist. And there are no constitutional rights. The Constitution gives no one rights. The rights are there regardless of the Constitution. And that's why the framers could assert those rights in the name of godliness and righteousness long before the Constitution was written. That's why we can do the same regardless of what the courts interpret or twist in the Constitution. So morally, they're still in open violation, not only of their oath, but of the actual law of this land, because it still is the supreme law, even though they ignore it. But even if tomorrow they say the Constitution is gone, our rights don't change one iota, and people need to understand that. They always say,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Those rights were God-given natural rights that whether they got written down or didn't get written down, they are still our rights.
That
Exactly.
Constitution basically says this: those are the rules to play in the sandbox. Unfortunately, we're not in that sandbox.
yeah.
Right. So we need to move back into the sandbox. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yeah, you have to decide where you want to go and find out where you are now and bridge the gap. That's as simple as it gets.
Well, and if we want to come down to the foundation of that, we say, well, the government's, not abiding by the rules. They're not in the sandbox, et cetera. But the whole foundation of our laws, let's be candid. If you have a nation of hundreds of millions of people and they say, we want liberty, we have rights, and then they murder 50 million babies in the name of their rights, you will not have liberty. You cannot have a nation that is completely in opposition to liberty and living that way every day, right down to the individual level, right down to the church, who lays their approval on the abuse of their neighbor, the abuse of the innocent, the abuse of people in the courts, the abuse of people in the womb, the abuse of everyone as long as it's not them, and then have them say, oh God, please save us, please give us liberty. That's not repentance.
Well, I happen to be with you on the repentance thing. Drew?
Yeah, well, I think everything's voluntary, and we agree to live in this commercial fiction, and we got what we ask for, When we turn 18, we say, yeah, I want a credit card, I want a driver's license, I want all these government
Perks.
benefits and perks, and then we say, but I want to be free, and
well, we volunteered for all of this. I mean, they did it through fraud and duress, and keep us playing through fraud and duress. But at a certain point in time, we have to wake up, and certain people, they have gotten rid of these adhesion contracts, and they walk uprightly. I believe. I think we have one of my issues is that we want people to obey the law. God's law, to the Ten Commandment type framework, but they don't even understand it anymore. We have been so corrupted by the media and the people behind the media that women don't understand what morality is anymore. Young people don't understand what morality is anymore. Do you agree, Mike, or disagree?
Well, Tricia, I think you just hit on something very interesting, and I'm going to shake you up a little bit. Those 10 Commandments have been tampered with. Okay, they've been changed. People don't understand them. They need to start waking up to what's going on. We're being controlled by a massive infection, actually, of a tribe that does what it wants to do. All your Bibles are pretty much printed in kosher publishing outside of Monroe, North Carolina, just south of Charlotte. And they just recently, about 8 years ago, that's not really recent, but 8 years ago, they actually changed something, and that was about the 6th or 7th commandment says, thou shalt not kill. Is that correct?
That's what it used to say anyway.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and that's what I'm trying to get to, is people don't realize it's been tampered with, it's been changed. It now says, thou shalt not murder. And then we have a lot of people out there jumping up and down about God this and God that. Well, I'm just going to flat say, if you look very close to the first commandment, it says, thou shalt put no other gods before me. Now, I'm not a religious Bible thumper, and I don't get into religious, but I know plenty about what's going on in that arena. Thou shalt not put any other gods before me. Well, you say it very, very, very slowly. Thou shalt put no other gods before me. So we're dealing with a multitude of different inversions and different interpretations of what is a god, okay? And so you kind of have to decide what you want and what you don't want in your life. There is a certain tribe out there that uses Lucifer as their god. Then you've got Buddha, and then you've got the sun god. It goes on and on and on and on. And this is where the religious part of the Patriot movement kind of tends to kind of go its own path. And what I see we need to do is simply put the religion in the background and do away with politics. Create a third party called the Do-Right Party, the American Do-Right Party, and you start making decisions based on what's good for America, what's good for America's people, and anything that's left over, you share it with the world. That's what we've been doing. Go to Europe, go to India, go any place you want to. Take the extra we have that we can spare, and we'll be more glad to share it with you. In the meantime, come on over, enjoy our country, take back the values that you think are good for your country, and we'll help you build yours. But we're not doing that. I mean, we've been subverted, and it's been shoved down our throats. We are being made into a third world country, and we are in a war zone, and it's getting ready to break loose here pretty soon.
Well, I agree with that as well. So there's a lot of different angles to this whole mess that we find ourselves in. And so, I know the Bible's been corrupted. I know the New Testament, if you read people like Bart Ehrman and whatnot, Jesus interrupted those books. I used to be a missionary. I used to be a Pentecostal minister, and I have a different perspective. I probably think more of the Old Testament than I do of the New Testament these days, but I still see our morality is gone haywire, and it's because of that tribe that you're talking about. And so, how can we? Is there a God that looks on this? I believe there is. Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to disagree because, first of all, any one of us, and I do this all the time. I mean, there's no question that we have translations of the Bible that are messed up and watered down and things like that. But at any time, you can take a translation, like the NAS or the KJV or whatever that you use, and you can go straight to the Greek word. So first of all, in terms of the commandments, thou shalt not kill is very much thou shalt not murder. That is the Hebrew word. It was actually translated into thou shalt not kill for English translations, but kill there is murder because it's, if you go back to the Hebrew word. And if you go to the Hebrew and you're looking at God, it is very much Yahweh. The Bible is not referring to any other God but the one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so I don't go down the road of, there's all these different gods. No, there's not. There's one. But I want to qualify that with the fact that I'm not going to force my belief of that on anybody by force of law, by force of arms, by any of it. I'm just going to stand on my position. But the reality is this nation was founded on a belief in Yahweh, on a belief in Christ, with limitations so that the government could not force that on people, as was the case and as was happening in England. And so we put these limitations in place. But there's no question as to our foundation. And you can't be vague. You can't play vague games with morality and with God and with what is law. God defined the foundation of law. The reason it's wrong to murder is because God said. And so as soon as you get away from that, and this is where, even though a lot of atheists will agree with my principles and I'll still defend their liberty, their argument kind of falls flat. Because if you say, well, there is no one God, there is no supreme power, really what you're saying is it's up to man. And so at that point, morality, liberty, all of it becomes whatever you say it is today. And that's what's gotten us where we are today, is because we've rejected God, we've rejected morality, and that's what our nation was founded on. We said in the Declaration, we don't know if we're doing this all right, but God help us. We want to have liberty for our children. Paraphrasing, of course. Right. But God was very much in the Declaration, and there was no dispute about what God we were talking about. It wasn't some pagan idol. It wasn't Satan. It was Yahweh. And
well, I have a whole lot. We're going to have to do a whole show on that sometime, because I have a whole difference of opinion on this. Or not difference of opinion. The Yahweh thing, I totally get that. I'm a two-seed liner at the end of the day. If I'm going to believe the Bible, those are the things that I can see historical evidence for. However, Drew, I think there's really only one law, and that is do no harm.
Well, I didn't realize this was going to be a biblical.
I didn't know either. We're going to get back to the situation in Oregon in a minute, but I just want to wrap up this little discussion here so we can move on.
Okay, well, there are so many different Bible versions that if you don't use the concordances and look at the original Greek words, the original Hebrew words, right, it's all gobbledygook. And there is only one God, and the problem is we have all kinds of smaller gods, and they value everything in money. And
well, okay, yeah. Well, I go back to the do no harm part. So, okay, what's going on in Oregon? We've got a multitude of reports about the abuse that is happening to the ranchers and the townspeople that were out and visited the refuge. Obviously, the feds have been watching that, and they are going and pulling people out of cars still, putting them on their knees, handcuffing them, putting guns in their faces. What are they trying to accomplish?
Fear and terror. That's what they do. That's what they're professionals at. And if you cause enough fear and terror, then you can save the people by offering them security and safety.
The Hegelian dialect. First we create the problem so we can fix the problem. But I think the situation, this tells me how disturbed this corporation is that this message is getting out. I think, as black as, like Charles Dickens once said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And he said that in The Tale of Two Cities about the French Revolution, which was a Jewish, travesty. However, so my point here is that we must be close to victory. We must be making some inroads here. Otherwise, they wouldn't be overreacting like this. They are going crazy to put these people back in the box, get them out of this constitutional mode, get them out of saying that they have rights. They're freaked out. Totally freaked out. These Praetorian guards are way overreacting here.
Well, they are overreacting, and the problem is I don't know if it's really new. I mean, I think the Patriots, obviously we're seeing it taken to a new level, but I think people are a little bit in shock right now. They just saw the government murder one of our own. They saw an assassination, and they saw a good man who was a peacemaker, who was defending the rule of law, the principles of the Constitution, and gunned down in cold blood. And so we see more of an attack. It's more of a frontal attack. But at the same time, for years now, we have 1,000+ Americans being killed every year. And by police, by government in this country. And all the while, much of the patriots and much of the conservatives, and however you want to lump it in, are saying, oh, well, most of the government's good. Most of the police are good. Most of the courts are good, even though they're not. They're attacking liberty.
Who's saying that?
I see that constantly from people. And it's very frustrating. I mean, I can see that in your voice. And because there's still this attitude. Here's what I'm realizing. There's a lot of people, and I'm going to say there's a lot of people that have a value liberty. They value liberty for their children, but they're really not willing to recognize that our police have been completely corrupted. Our government and courts have been completely corrupted. They want to hold out hope. I still support the police, and it's like that statement makes no sense. You support individual actions. To say I support police is like saying I support the federal government.
Well, the police are obviously not here for the community. And there was this big shift. It happened. I was aware of it late in 99, 2000, where the police departments, well, at least on Maui, totally changed an attitude from being community servants to being these jackboots. And there's been that big shift here. And people, they're brainwashed, like Yuri Bezmenov said. Even after 15 to 20 years of brainwashing, you can't even show people photographic evidence for them to get it.
How many children with toy guns have to be murdered by police before people say, oh, wait, maybe something's wrong?
So, yeah, and wait a minute. And this whole media nonsense took the guns away from little boys. They weren't supposed to play cowboys and Indians anymore because that was bad. Yet this tribe and the useful idiots that served them came up with these violent video games. And now we send these young men into war and turn them into complete sociopaths, where they come back and they have a taste for blood and they can't get enough. And those were the people that Lavoy Finicum ran into the other night.
Yeah, I mean, these are people that have no value for the lives of others and no value for liberty or the principles of our Constitution or of natural law. And so if you have a situation, the problem is so many people still support that government, because once you recognize, if you wake up and recognize that our government is wholly sold out to evil, then your conscience begins to prick you and you have to take action and you have to do something. So most people choose fully willingly just to continue to be asleep. And they always have an excuse. They always look for a conspiracy or this or that. And I see this a lot from patriots. The reality is it's us. It's whether we're willing to stand up. It's not a matter of, it's not ISIS. It's not Jews. It's not Americans. It's not this race. It's not blacks. It's not Mexicans. The reality is it's black and white. It's good and evil. It's tyranny and liberty. And you either defend it and you stand up for it or you don't. You judge individual actions. You step up and you defend the rule of law. And the reality is people aren't willing to do it. And that's really what we're seeing out of Oregon. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going in a positive direction from this, but people are terrified. They don't really know what to do. And it's just like all the I don't want to pick on anybody here, but all the Patriot 3% militia groups that have been telling us for years, we're training, we're organized, we're ready so that we can help bring peace, so we can prevent this from going bad. What are they all doing? They're releasing press releases, stand down orders, playing politics. Suddenly, the toughness is going away.
It's a little disgusting. It really is. And so I'm kind of fed up with that myself. But the thing that I see is that the media has so controlled this argument that they have a knee-jerk reaction to whenever anybody complains. They have two arguments, two things that they say to shut down the conversation. One of them is, oh, well, you're anti-government. And those are the arguments I've been seeing on Facebook, that I had to go around with some idiot saying, well, that's anti-government and they deserve what they got. And you can't do that to the government. No. Didn't you swear an oath to serve and uphold the Constitution? I mean, you're here to support and uphold the Constitution, not the government. When the government's wrong, they need to be taken to task just like anybody else. Mike?
Right, absolutely. And I think, once again, and I talked about this on last week's video, and I'm going to say it again, and anybody who's listening, we really need to understand this. Stop letting the enemy control the narrative. Take it back. Take the narrative back. Stop playing their game. We're always trying to defend ourselves on their terms. And so somebody says, well, you're anti-government. And I'll say, no, our government is anti-government because we, the people, are the government. We lay down the law, and they're the ones breaking it. I will flat out, and I have done this, I'll look at a police officer, and I'll say, you're an anarchist, aren't you? And you want to throw off a police officer, try saying that, and he'll be like, what? And I'll be like, well, you totally ignore the rule of law. You just are arbitrarily doing what you want and what your buddies tell you, and that's not law. So by definition, that's lawlessness, and you're existing in a state of anarchy. And so every one of the angles that they use against us can be used against them, because it's just like what's happening with our patriots that are in jail right now. It's just like what's happened to people like Jeff Winehouse, Schaefer Cox. I mean, people all over this nation. Whatever they do to you is what you will be charged with. And it's shocking how literal this is.
It's absolutely amazing. You can always tell, okay, what they're going to. This is something now. You're disagreeing with the Jewish question, but I can't, because whatever the Jews say has happened to them, it's what they're doing to everyone else. Mike?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I mean, I don't play this. I don't go for the thing of picking on a race. It's not about race to me. It's
well,
about
okay. Well, we got some people. You got to hang with us here, Mike.
Well, what happened in Oregon is very simple. That was a Gordon Call ambush, plain and simple.
That's
they
right.
Need to take somebody down and put some fear into everybody to make them start getting a little bit out of line so they can do the rest of them. What happened to that truck with over 100 bullet holes in it is obviously that was going to be a wholesale slaughter. I don't think you could not come up with another conclusion. And it goes a little bit deeper than that. I was starting to get concerned about the Hammond women who are defending themselves, trying to make a living out of the ranch, and also pay off another $200,000 in a fee that they have to pay. I mean, that's absolute nonsense. The $200,000 they've already paid needs to be refunded to them, and then that judge needs to be charged 3 times damages, give it to the family, and that judge needs to back off real fast, okay? Also, that prosecutor in the 9th District needs to back off real fast, too. That's a setup, okay? I don't want to tell you what else is going on, but that's what I sniff out and I smell. And here's something else that's really going to bother you a lot. It's not about what happened there in Oregon. It's what happens underneath Oregon. That's what it's all about. They want to hide that. We are being ripped apart with this country. It's being sold out from underneath us, and the Clinton Foundation are the #1 culprits in this. And you know what? The best way to handle Hillary Clinton is to drag her into an alley and surgically remove her tongue. That'll take care of the problem we have with her.
Well, those are pretty strong words. And I think the situation that they're trying to get around, they're trying to cover up these egregious crimes that they have been committing in this county and all over this country by making this about the Bundys and the folks that are with them, and trying to control the narrative, like you say. And we, in those documents that went out, they gave them to the FBI, unfortunately, but at least they disseminated them to a bunch of other people. They've been stored electronically. They've been gone everywhere. So there's going to be no suppressing the actual evidence that shows how criminal that judge, the sheriff, Hillary Clinton, and everyone involved in this land grab about these minerals under this property and about just oppressing people has been. And I think that's got to keep coming out. We've got to make it about that.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
It's great the more we can expose that. But I think the reality is, look, we've been saying for years and years, well, we're going to expose how criminal they are. We're going to expose how criminal they are. And it's being exposed. The people don't care. The people are slaves. And the government says, you will do what we say or we'll kill you. And the people say, yes, master. It's really that simple. The question is not whether they're breaking the law or whether it's known that they're breaking the law. Really, the Congress knows it. They talk about it all the time. They do nothing. The people know it, that the courts are violating it. The Congress is violating it. The president's violating it. The rule of law is gone because unprincipled men, a nation of unprincipled people, will never have the courage to stand up against evil. And so until we have that foundation of principle restored, and unfortunately I'm afraid that it's going to be a great deal more suffering and chaos that's going to require that, because historically suffering tends to wake people up and get them on their knees, get them looking toward things that matter. And unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to have anything else besides that.
The legal profession has failed to do and protect the society, which is what their job was to do.
I disagree.
Fair, sandbox, make it justice, and all of a sudden it's turned around to be just us. And I'm done with that.
Right. Well, okay, let me qualify that. I partially disagree. It's true that the legal system's totally failed, but really, once again, who's failed to protect the innocent is the people, especially the professing American church. I mean, all the way back to 1776, the people of the church were kind of supposed to set the standard, right? They were supposed to be out there defending the innocent, helping the weak, the poor, the fatherless. And they said, "Oh, let's let the government do that." But it all falls on the people. It's I'm so tired of us saying,
well,
This
501c.
it's not.
Go ahead, Mike.
It's not the people. It's the lies and the propaganda out of the Jewish YouTubes that's destroying this country. Okay, you can't make good decisions unless you get good information. It's not the people. It's the damn people who give them bad information, lying, cheating, stealing. Those are the people you want to get out.
I agree that we should get them out. I don't think it has anything to do with race, but I agree that we should get the bad people out. But the point is, the people are always accountable. The individual accountability is where it's at, and those people are there because the people keep sending them there. Those of us that want the information, those of us that want to know what liberty is, it's not complicated. It's not hard. It's not a big, in-depth conspiracy theory. It's right and wrong. And if you throw out God, you'll never have right and wrong. If you include God, you'll always have right and wrong.
Dan, what is Obama and Bush and the Clintons and Biden and Pelosi, John Kerry, John McCain? What do all those people have in common?
It doesn't matter to me what
they have a bloodline.
Absolutely.
They're all Jewish.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go down the anti-Semitism road.
Oh, okay, well, you sit right there on the little pedestal, and you just think it's not happening because it happened. We've had a Jewish
guys,
president ever since Roosevelt. Man,
Hold
you
on,
need to wake
let him
up.
finish.
The Bolshevik Revolution started with Jews, okay, from New York. You need to get your history straightened out.
Yeah, you guys are totally off track. If you think it's about a race, we're no better than anybody else. Don't get me wrong. I support Jews' rights as much as anybody else. If they're doing wickedness, they're just as corrupt as anybody else. And so you can point the finger at all these people and say, well, they're Jews or they're this. That's the whole, to make the argument about race is so opposite to the principles of liberty that it's not even.
Let's say once again, they're not really a race.
They are a race.
They've been amalgamated. Yes and no. It's the Ashkenazi situation that we're dealing with. It goes back to I'm a two-seed liner, like I said, but you have to look at who controls the media. Who controls the media? It's Jewish controlled. And even Joel Stein, said he was offended when Abe Foxman came out and said, and people used to know that he was offended. I'll find his statement for you. And because I think Mike's making a valid point. And Christians, the church has been so infiltrated, and these 501c3 churches have to go. We'd have had no 1776 if they'd been 501c3 churches. They're completely muzzled, and they're bamboozled into thinking that Jews are God's chosen people, which is a complete and utter lie. We say they're chosen for destruction. Mike?
No, that's the Bible makes it clear that they're God's chosen people.
No, that's we have a vast difference of opinion here. God's chosen people, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are the lost tribes, and they are not Jews. They are the Anglo-Saxon people that went on to create the 10 Gothic nations of Europe.
And the 12 tribes of Jacob, whose name is Israel, all those 12 tribes are Hebrew tribes. Jesus was not Jewish; he was Hebrew, and the tribe of Judah is not Jewish; it's Hebrew. Every single one of them. So I have a question for you, Israel. In order for Israel to exist, what has to happen? It's the return of Jesus, isn't it?
I'm not sure what your question is, and I'm not sure how it pertains to the topic of liberty. See, I feel like you guys are so distracted by the Jewish thing and hate for the Jews that it's distracting us from the real issue here.
No. The answer to the question I asked for was that you all wait for Jesus to come back. Well, if that's the way Israel can exist, well, what's it doing there right now? And they control Hollywood, the banking system, Wall Street, Federal Reserve.
Yeah, these are all distractions.
You tell me what other tribe out there controls all that?
I can see why you feel that.
I've had my say, okay? Yeah. I've made my point. I'm going to back off, and you want to build another route, that's fine. But I know too much, and I know exactly what's causing all this nonsense, too.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, guys. I mean, these are all, I'm so tired of these excuses pointing the finger at other people. The reason we have tyranny is because we failed. We allowed our education system to be perverted. We allowed our churches and our values in this nation to be perverted. And so we can point the finger at other people all day long. And of course, people from every race, you can find wickedness. And so I don't
Okay, hold on. I want a referee here for just a second. And I want to say only 2% of our population here is Jews. And so I always bring this up. It's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. But at the end of the day, we have allowed this and need to take responsibility for allowing them to get this kind of power in our country and in the world. We have to say, why did we let this happen? And it was the Shabez Goy that were bought off by them and let this happen.
Yeah,
and we went along with it.
It's still making it about the Jews, and it's not about the Jews. The Jews have every right to exist. They have the same rights everyone else does, and there's no foundation in liberty of race. And so as soon as you make it about race, we're off base. You're not standing with liberty as soon as you say, oh, it's this race's fault. People, look, the idea of hating the Jews is of Satan. It's all through the Bible. And Satan's been trying to destroy the Jews ever since.
We got to get off this biblical topic because we have a difference of opinion here that I can't straighten out for you in 5 minutes. And so I can make my point. You're an intelligent man, Gavin. I'm going to give you some evidence that I think is going to turn it around for you, but we can't make it here. Let's get back to what's going on in Oregon. Let's get back to, I'd like to really talk about this. And I know, Drew, that you saw Cliven Bundy. He put out a statement this week that earlier in the week, it had to be Monday or Tuesday, and it just kind of...
It was Monday night,
blew me away. I'm not sure I understand it. And he put out a statement where he was speaking for the people of Harney County. I don't get to understand. I love Cliven and Carol, and I don't understand why he thinks he gets to speak for the people of Harney County and what that notarized letter was about. But apparently you've been following some of this. Can you kind of enlighten me as to where you think he's going with this?
It's fascinating, really. On Monday night, John Stadtmiller interviewed Cliven for about 45 minutes. And the first 30 minutes was Cliven saying it's not the government's fault. The only fault is the ranchers' fault because they signed management agreements. I was going, where is this going to? But he took us back through history. 1934 with the Taylor Grazing Acts and up through the creation of BLM, and he said it really is the rancher's fault, and he is one of the few ranchers who hasn't signed a management agreement with the BLM. And he said it really isn't the government's fault, it's the rancher's fault because they keep on signing these management agreements.
Yep, they do. They keep on going into the adhesion contracts, and we talked about that last week with the Hage case. The judge in that case, insisted his ruling was that the Hages had to sign their contract with the BLM again, but the BLM had to give them their water rights, and that's just wrong. Rights are rights, and privileges are privileges, and the judge misruled there. But even so, they've gone back and they've reversed that ruling because of this lockdown that's coming, from the federal government. It is full spectrum dominance as far as I can see. Saying that the judge was biased against the government is like saying he was biased against rapists and murderers. Ridiculous ruling.
Drew, Cliven was, you are correct. Cliven was trying to say to everybody, the contracts, adhesions, are nothing but entrapment. You have to read the small print, and he was basically correct in what he was saying, and you are correct, yes.
Okay, but why is he Drew, I don't understand why he felt like, has he explained this, why he could speak for the people of Harney County? I didn't understand that the message that he put out in that notarized letter.
was funny because all he said was, I'm finally taking charge. He said, I wasn't in favor of this when it started, but I'm finally taking charge, and I'm leaving everything in the sheriff's lap, and I'm sure he has the responsibility to make sure nobody gets hurt. And that's all he said, which was, I thought, rather odd. But
Okay. Gavin, did you have a point about Monday night's notarized letter from Clive and Bundy?
I agree that it was a little confusing, and I don't know exactly where it's going. I think the main thing, I mean, I feel like he was trying to in a way assert that, hey, this isn't over. This land is not relinquished to the federal government, and it still belongs to the people. Now, the way it came off seemed a little bit confusing, and I think the main thing is to stick to the fundamental message of this. Honestly, I guess I don't have an answer for the letter because it was a little bit confusing. And I think it's a reminder for us. It's really hard when you're dealing with things of such a large scale. Obviously, there's a lot of complexity involved. And I think it's really important that as much as possible, the message is as simple as possible. And I've seen this just with tactics on social media and stuff. You know, when you have long letters and long posts and a lot of text, I mean, things can be taken out of context. They can be distracting to people. They oftentimes, frankly, just get ignored if they're long. And of course, nothing posted by the Bundys really gets ignored at this point. But what I'm getting at here is, I think the emphasis is simple message, returning the rule of law, returning the land to the people, returning beneficial use. And I think Ammon was really doing well. Lavoie was really doing well with dealing with that message. I really wish that, we could get Ammon out and have him communicate on this more. Although I'm sure once we do get him out, they're going to be trying to restrain his communication because, they're also holding Pete Santilli for simply reporting, and they're trying to say, well, if you let it out, you can't use the internet.
Well, hold on, Gavin. Pete's done a whole lot more than report. I mean, he's been inciting violence. I mean, 3 times that I called into his show to report on the BLM, he called Daniel P. Love every single freaking time and said inflammatory things to a federal agent. I agree he's a thug, and then tried to get me and the other caller to do the same damn thing. And I ain't threatening a federal agent, especially one that's a known murderer.
Right, but let's qualify that. I understand a lot of people have issues with Pete, and Pete can certainly get inflammatory, and I would always come back to the principles of law. This idea that being opinionated, inflammatory, even rude, that it's somehow illegal or that people belong in jail for it, we have to not look for those excuses, I think. It's just like what the media is trying to do with Lavoie going for a gun. The story is not about whether Lavoie went for a gun, and he didn't, and we can see that. But that's not the story. Had Lavoie gone for a gun, he would have had every right to defend himself against unmarked attackers on a highway trying to kill him. And so I think you can say the same for Pete. People might say, well, I don't like the way he does things, or I don't like this and this, or he's done this in the past. But the reality is, Pete was getting the message out there from the ground. He was the only one consistently getting video out so that you always knew what was going on, and they took him out because of that, and they don't want him back there because of that.
Okay, well, that's one point of view. And Hawk, I know you're listening, and I just got to say I'm getting feedback on Gmail that there's bad sound quality. All the words are breaking up. If you can come on and tell me what to do or type to me what to do about that. We've got some bad sound quality that is breaking up. That would help. I recommend they go to the live feed on YouTube. So give me some pointers on that. Okay, so I don't know why that's happening, but we'll try to clear.
Nope, what happened? I just lost something.
Actually, you've been fine all along. I don't know. I have no breaks, no breakdown in audio, no nothing.
Yeah, we just lost Patricia.
No, I'm back again.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, I think we've been hearing each other fine. So it must be your outstream going to wherever it's going that's got a bandwidth issue or something.
Everything's fine here. There's been no breaks. I'm listening to both sides. Studio A, live stream, everything seems fine. And it might just be people out there who have crappy internet connections and it's buffering out on them.
Okay, that could be it. Thanks, Hawk. Appreciate you jumping in on that.
No problem.
Next, I just want to let everybody know you're listening to Revolution Radio. This is freedomslips.com. Tonight at Sacred Cow BBQ, my guests are Gavin Sames, Mike from the Carolinas, and Drew from Canada. And we're having kind of a heated discussion here about this, and it's been one that's been going on. But so I want to talk about the dissension in the Patriot movement. I thought that one of the best articles that I've seen, and I don't think I feel that way because it made me cry my eyes out, was that report from Ohio, the response to Lavoie's. They made an amazing response, and it was on the fifth column, thefifthcolumnnews.com. If you haven't seen it, man, you try to read that without crying. They actually had people show up. It's all their group, and they had men show up with wearing blue tarps, a few of them, just to honor Lavoie. It was absolutely amazing. I played I want to play this again. This made me cry. I'm going to play it right now. Going to turn the sound up. Hope it doesn't blow everybody out, but we'll try it. Yeah, that was a great rally, and I was proud of those folks. But they brought up the point that people were divided, patriots were divided on whether they were doing the right thing, and so I want to justify that. There was one thing that I thought was wrong. I think they've been, well, maybe two things. I think the Bundys have, our strengths are our weaknesses. And I understand that, and their kindness sometimes to people. We obviously know that Mark McConnell was not properly vetted. We know that. Who didn't vet him? Somebody shows up, they're there for 2 days, and they insist that Ammon drives with them. They don't get arrested. Nothing happens to them. And now Lavoie's dead. The car's totally shot up. They were going for Lavoie. There's no doubt about it. I know they have listening devices down there at the refuge. I know they've been listening to this whole thing and knew that what his response would be. He would always say, they're not going to arrest me. So they knew if they set this up that they would have an opportunity to murder him in cold blood just like they did. And I know you folks have to leave, and that's no problem. I'm going to be dialing in Shelley Johnson here pretty soon. So you want to comment on that before we go? And also, I just before you go, I want to know, because I think they chose the right location. I think they chose it for the right reason, that it was out of town. It was unoccupied. They wanted it away so they weren't creating any tension with the townspeople. But I think they did a poor job after the first rally of letting the other groups know they were down there. People were like lost without any direction. So they did a poor job on communication. Do you agree with that, Gavin?
You mean the people at the refuge?
Absolutely, yes. The people when that first Saturday, they failed to communicate, and everybody that was left in town that didn't go down to the refuge and didn't know about it were going like, well, what do we do now? There was no direction there. And I think that was a huge failing of this thing, is the lack of communication to the other groups that showed up.
Yeah, and I think this is a common problem, and it's certainly, we can look at lots of issues that were tactically not the best choice. And I think it really resonates that, Ammon wasn't really there as a militia per se. I mean, I know you can call him that, but he was there to stand up because nobody else is doing it. And that's really what the Patriots did down there. And unfortunately, we have heavy loss because of how everything went down. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to say, well, it's easy to say from our perspective, right? If they had done this and if they had done that, none of this, it wouldn't have gone bad. And the truth is, we're dealing with a very powerful government who has the ability to terrorize with immunity. And so hindsight's 20/20, right? But I think the lesson to be learned here is communication. Look, this is the same problem we had at Bundy Ranch. I mean, some of us were there. And it's the same issue. And so even when you try, I'm sure they wanted the communication to be better. And arguably, in a global sense, what Ammon did, really, the communication was getting out in terms of the message.
The message was getting out. They were doing a fabulous job in that. I say the original setup that created such a division. and we need to watch that. And so you have to wonder, was it disorganized for a reason? Is there somebody in that organization? And clearly there is someone that did not vet Mark McConnell and let him go. And I have my question marks about that. So anyway, I know it's the top of the hour and some of you folks need to leave. Gavin, I've appreciated it so much. Drew, I know it's late. And Mike, if you can stay with us, please do. I'm going to be bringing in and Shelley Johnson, but I just have to let everybody know Pete Santilli may have been the first one there, but he was not the only one there. Revolution Radio was up there. We've been doing live streams. Hawk's been, working around the clock. The angel donors have really stepped up to the plate to make that happen. And Sherry's been doing a good job. And they've been there as reporters. They have not been creating the news. They've been reporting the news. And I have to, give kudos to them. They did a fabulous job.
Excellent.
And we'll be live tomorrow at the Lavoy Finicum funeral. We'll be as live as we can be. We'll probably have a lot of dead air going on. You'll just be seeing what's going on because I think the tears are going to be flowing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, we keep trudging on, and we just got to stand principled and try to unite and get the message, clean and clear as much as possible. So.
Oh, okay, awesome. And
yeah, thanks for letting me be part of this, guys. Thanks.
Okay, awesome, Drew. I appreciate everything that you do as one of the barbecue correspondents around here. Thank you both very much, and I'll let you go. And Mike, as I'm bringing, do you have anything more you want to say about this before we close out this segment? And I bring Michelle Johnson in.
No, not right offhand. I think it'd be nice to probably have a session that we could call the Buffalo Chip Pathways.
What are we calling it?
The Buffalo Chip Pathways.
Keep talking. I have no idea what you mean.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to say is some of it, what we all talk about, seems like it comes from the South End. And getting together and organized and things like that, that's just where the breakdown is at here. We get enough people together, and you're going to have some rules set up where changes are made, and changes are made without permission. We don't need their permission anymore.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. What I always notice, and I'm sure you did too. And but before I go to my point here, I want to welcome Michelle Johnson. She can tell us about her new radio show. Michelle, welcome to the barbecue.
Hi, Patricia. Thanks for having me.
I want to introduce you to Mike from the Carolinas. He's still with us, and we're live streaming on YouTube tonight. So, my point that I'm making here is that every militia group, every Klan organization, every group that is pro-freedom has been seriously and effectively infiltrated. I mean, that is what our enemies do best. Agree, disagree?
Agreed.
100% agreed.
So, and what's the answer?
Learn to identify. You have to learn to identify and point out who is infiltrated. And if they get caught, then they'll suffer the consequences.
Yeah, and I think that's where the breakdown is even when they're getting caught because of the sponsorship behind them, that there are no consequences.
Very good observation. Just the same thing that's happening with the law we have now. There's supposed to be authority, but selective authority is what it is. It's selective lawmaking, and there's nobody there to back anybody out. It's de facto anarchy, basically, and it's not on our side.
Well, if you don't mind, let's clarify some terms, because anarchy has been used to confuse us with the word chaos. Chaos is exactly what we have because we have an illegitimate corporation masquerading as a government. Anarchy simply means without rulers. It does not mean without rules. And every chance I get, I'm going to correct that misperception, because personally, I am an anarchist and I am a voluntarist, and I am perfectly capable of governing myself. And the sooner we have more of that type of perception with an awareness of what anarchy really is, the better off we're all going to be.
What we're getting right now, Michelle, is we're getting too many laws. We've got
Well,
a sandbox
yeah.
that's got some real good rules in it, and we just need to obey the rules. The trouble is that we're being squeezed at the neck
Oh,
because
of
we have
course.
too many laws.
Oh, I said that in an email to Michelle Fiore this week, because she kept saying that, she's a lawmaker. And I go, no, we don't need more lawmakers. We need law repealers. We need to get rid of the statutory crap that's been going on since the 50s. We need to get back to common law courts. We need to get, less laws. They're just strangling us with this
Absolutely.
administrative crap.
And there is not one person running for so-called office that takes that stand. And I'll bet you they would never get quote unquote elected if they did, but boy, would they have popular support.
Right.
We have a bunch.
Go ahead, Mike.
All those people up there running for president, that's just a dog and pony show. You look behind the scenes and look who's pulling the puppet strings.
Of course.
Those people you want to deal with. Those are the ones, and it's too bad they can't take their money and put it in a positive way rather than trying to control everybody. This doesn't make sense to me. Never have.
Well, that's because we try
more.
to ascribe human qualities to these parasites that are running the world, and that is an impossible approach because they're psychopathic and they're sociopathic. They do not operate with the mind that you and I operate with, and it's a big mistake to attribute to them any kind of human qualities because those of us who do have human qualities cannot comprehend that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how sociopaths really do it because they can hide out, and normal people can't really grasp how evil it really is and how evil these people are. They just can't. It's so foreign to them that they can't get it.
They can't operate outside of conflicts and confusion. And when they create the chaos, they always seem to have the answers for it too. So
yes, the Hegelian dialectic, and that's how our world has been run for centuries now.
Thank you very much.
Yep, exactly. So, is Oregon just a flash in the freedom pan? Do you see this moving forward? I know the government's doing everything they can to make laws that we can't speak against the government. I mean, it's all completely nonsense. They want to shut down the dissidents. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's right. The First Amendment, they certainly wanted to play games with, but without the First Amendment, you don't get the truth. And what we've been getting all along for many, many years is nothing but propaganda. It's arranged, controlled propaganda, and that's what the alternative news is being able to give people is actually behind the scenes what the truth really is. And it's getting more and more difficult to find out what the truth is, but I think that's what they're scared of. You can't control people with the truth. You've got to control it with some type of propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in truth resonates with people, and I think that's what made Ammon Bundy and Lavoy Finicum so dangerous.
It absolutely did. And the other thing that made it very difficult for them to put this back in the box is because those guys represented the everyman that we have looked at over the years as heroes because we could relate to them. They're not some authority figure. They didn't come in with some major agenda other than just the exposure of what's going on. And people resonated with that. And that's the hard thing to stuff back in the box. When people see this stuff going on, maybe for the first time, because they could relate to these guys.
And if you hear the message, I mean, if the message makes sense and resonates with people, they get it. I believe that, people recognize the truth when they hear it. But what the media's been done, just about every article that I've read ends up with they're trying to vilify Ammon Bundy and the others by saying, oh, yeah, those goofballs in Oregon, and they don't know what they're doing. They're really trying to get it so the zombies don't look at what's going on. They just believe the government drivel.
Well, that's the problem we have with the zombies is because they're getting their data from these mainstream sources. They're also being mind controlled and brainwashed by the the digital aspect of what's going on the screen. And so their consciousness is just kind of bypassed, and these tactics are just laid right into the subconscious.
So, Mike, that's what I say. That's what's called brainwashing. And that's what Yuri Bezmenov completely brought up, that, after 15 to 20 years of brainwashing, people can't see the truth even if you give them photographic evidence for it. And he called for a revolution in the streets in 1970. It's way past time. And and I know Dancing with the Stars and the NFL and all the rest has hypnotized people into believing that kind of stuff's important and kept us out of the streets. Don Harkins used to say that he thought that they were really trying to incite people to a revolution, to be out in the streets so they could declare martial law. And it's been nearly impossible to get people off the couch.
Yeah, amen.
If you go down the road in your car and take a look at the sidewalk, I'm willing to bet you more than half the people walking around with their nose in a smartphone, probably walking out in the middle of traffic. I've seen that so much it's scary. I'm thinking, what in the world has got you so pinned down that you don't think much of your own life? Why are you getting involved with this nonsense? Now, technology, I've got over 20 years in high-level computers. It's great when it's used properly. It's not so good when it's not used so properly. These people have got to have a life. And here's something else that's happened to this country. People have lost hope for a future. If you're getting laid off and you're fighting with everything you've got to try and make bills and not get the electricity turned off and get food for the kids and get them to school, there's not much hope there that people have to work for. Many years ago.
Exactly. There's nothing new under the sun. These people, they may have a few more gadgets than they ever had before, but it's the same strategy, the same plans that they've been running forever. And Hawk, I just want to give you some feedback. He did is he dialed back in and it sounds fine. Says he doesn't have crappy internet service. He just needed to dial back in. So if somebody's having a hard time and this doesn't sound right to you, just log out and log back in again, and they'll probably clear it up for you. But this whole thing.
Hey, Patty.
Yeah, go ahead, Hawk.
Everything sounds fine here. I'm getting no complaints. Maybe a couple of people are having buffering issues on YouTube.
Yep. But he just said he solved it by dialing back in. He logged out and logged back in again, and it solved the problem for him. We're sounding good to him now. So I know that's if anybody's having a hard time hearing, try that. It may work. Okay. So I'm completely lost my point. Next point, somebody jump in here, help me out.
Well, you were talking about the strategy having been,
yes,
going on for forever via the various different tools of the propaganda that have been in play at the time.
Right, and the economy thing is a huge one. I always call that making bricks without straw. I have that biblical default that I go to, and that's what they've got people doing right now. That yes. It takes everything that they've got to keep a roof over their heads, and you see all the foreclosure mess and whatnot. But stealing the land from the people is paramount to be able to have this complete totalitarian police state where the New World Order or the Jew World Order or whatever you want to call it, the Vatican, all them, they're all in on it. And it's time to throw off these shackles and stop having this loser mentality that they're too big, we can't beat them. I think we can beat them.
I'll offer all your listeners something that you don't want to forget. Take this with you wherever you go in life, and that is, where there's life, there's always hope. Don't ever forget that.
Yep, and I sometimes hear people say any day above ground gives us hope. So.
Also, it might be helpful to also remember one more thing. And in parts of my life, too, I've had to learn this the hard way, but you will find out that to have it the way you want it, you have to give up the way it is.
That's very good. Yep, I think
it's the fear. It's very hard. I know. I just know that people are so worried that, and that's why they're making such a spectacle of this entire thing. You look at Shauna Cox. I mean, there is a brave woman. I mean, she is a constitutionalist. She's a patriot, and they're not even letting her attend Lavoy Finicum's funeral in her hometown tomorrow.
Nope.
She is being sequestered at her mother's house or at home, and then they forced her to move her weapons. Now she hasn't been. I don't know why she has to do that. I know felons can't have firearms, but they moved to her son-in-law's place of business or where he works and then there was a mysterious fire that he was killed in. That is so tragic. And, that coincidence theorist part of me thinks, oh, well, isn't that an interesting coincidence? That's no freaking coincidence. I'm sorry. They attacked people's family to shut them up and back her off.
Of course
Agree?
they did. Of course they did. I mean, that was one of the first steps they took against Lavoy, was to remove his foster children to get him to shut up.
Right. What do you think? It's a coincidence, Mike?
No, I think they're weaponizing children is what they're doing. And I think in the long run, we're just being played for passies. I mean, we're expecting to have a buffer zone called the legal system to protect our interests and also the truth of what comes out, but it's not doing that. It's taking its own side, and like I said once before tonight, you don't get justice in there any longer. You're getting just us, and it's pretty plain and simple what's in there. You can just see it plain as day. And what good is it? I mean, these congressmen that were supposed to be our representatives, they don't represent us.
Well, this can't be a new problem because Shakespeare said, kill all the lawyers, kill them tonight.
Yes, exactly. Because the attorneys have always had an allegiance elsewhere but to their clients, and that allegiance is to that banker who sits on the bench.
Well, I might want to add, too, that the Northwest is famous for doing this. I think Oregon, Washington, Idaho, maybe Colorado and California is coming towards the East Coast. But did you know that suicide is legal now? And did you know that assisted suicide is legal now, too?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
Well, I find that it really, I mean, that's pretty interesting because, duels used to be legal. You could duel out in front of the courthouse. But when they made us these 14th Amendment fictional people, all of a sudden they outlawed dueling because you didn't have a right, to risk your own life because you're spoken for. Part of you is, been securitized.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised they're letting people commit suicide.
Well, that now they've got all the insurance policies in place, so they're covered.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't matter. They make money whether you're dead or alive.
Exactly, which is partly why they're all gearing up for this massive genocide that they're after now, because they've got everybody's estate trusts. They've got access to them. They've got insurance policies on those trusts and on the living being. And so if you actually depart this mortal coil, they make out like banksters in that way as well. So they're covered.
That's something I want to also go back to very quickly when Drew brought it up about Cliven telling everybody about some of the contracts that you were talking about that were being kind of used in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The territorial properties of the West, when it was a territory, were in trust with the states when they became a state to be given back out to the people. The federal government had no business owning anything out there. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the people. And that's another thing that Cliven was trying to get straightened out was none of this belongs to the federal government.
Well, and none of it really belongs to anybody except that we have stewardship over the land that we were given by our Creator so that we're able to take care of our families and able to responsibly access the resources of the land that we've been blessed to live upon. But in the bigger picture, it doesn't belong to anybody, neither the states nor the government nor us, as a matter of fact. We have been given stewardship and tenantship, but that is it.
In the last 5 years, I've seen this country become weaponized as in a war zone. And it's getting pretty obvious what the results are going to be here pretty soon. They're already starting to happen. So, what do you say to that? They're just looking for
the fact that they've made it so the white people are wrong, and there's no reason to defend Lavoy Finnecum's here because he had it coming. Look at all the terrible things we've done to the Indians. Look at the terrible things we've done to other people. So we deserve this. I mean, it's really a bizarre, hateful narrative, and they're the first people to cry hate when we say something, but they've really churned these other races against whites where they won't. Now, there's some that'll stand with us. Certainly, the man that's in charge of the common law grand jury in Oregon is obviously new to the U.S. I mean, he speaks with a Hispanic accent, so there's something crazy going on here.
Well, it's all part of that divide and conquer thing. If everybody is at each other's throats over race, over religion, over perception, over take your pick, then it's just so much easier to come in and pick it off.
Diversification is a weapon in itself.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Diversity. It's the part that they're looking for.
And I'll tell you, in my profession, it's the top 20% of anybody out there up in those arenas who did a great job who had good self-esteem and rapport and learned the rules and got along with everybody. We got along just fine with everybody. Didn't have a problem. But you get down to that bottom half of the tribes out here, and I'm telling you, they're just like they're dumbed down. It's like trying to kick a dog out off the porch. You just can't get it off. It'll just roll over and say, well, here's the other side. Go ahead and kick that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what taxation's been used for, is to buy votes. I mean, the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, it worked in South Africa. It's working here, and it's creating a group of people that think they're entitled and that everybody owes them a living. I don't hear the Irish complaining about the Irish slaves here in the U.S. that were much more unfairly treated than the black slaves, and there were more of them than the blacks. I don't hear any Irishmen complaining about that.
You know, that issue about slavery, and this is really interesting now, even in the South, it's a joke, but, if you there's a good way to resolve a lot of these problems here, and that's if you bring back slavery, everybody will have a job, 3 meals a day, a roof over their head, and the crime will go down to practically nothing. Think about it. Besides, you can't come out here in this world right now and not make a living without living off of somebody else. It can't be done.
Well, here's the point. I don't think that they didn't end slavery. They just made us all slaves to the federal government. And it's time for people to wake up and understand that. But it's very hard to do. People pay a tremendous price to get rid of all their adhesion contracts and be free men on the land. Don't you think, Shelley?
I think it's ridiculous, and they're making it worse as things go along, because in their own codes and statutes and rules and regulations, they have built-in remedies for these contracts. And the more people that discover them, implement them, and try to teach others about them, they're moving the goalposts. They're changing, they're adding to, taking away from, altering the remedy, essentially. And so they're not even abiding by their own fabricated de facto rules and regulations anymore. They're just flat out in blatant disregard for anything that they might have followed maybe even 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago.
Yeah, I've seen this thing like a freight train. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Pardon me.
But what I was going to say, real briefly, was that it's all about the money. What they're really saying is, I like those remedies you just brought up, Michelle, because here's what happens. You go out and get one of our tribal representatives, called a lawyer, come into one of our tribal courtrooms, and we have 5 doors to pick from. And if you get to pick the one door that gets you through there, hey, great, you spent some really good money. But I want to tell you just real briefly behind the scenes, don't tell anybody this, but the last 950,000 people who tried to get to that door, they never made it through there.
Right.
True enough. So it's the Patriot movement been marginalized here? Have they taken them out? I know they didn't show up. They did a great job controlling the narrative with game theory and keeping patriots away from Oregon to start with. This should have been 10 times, 100 times as many people show up in Burns, and yet the feds held a gun to the head of the Hammonds and said, tell Ammon Bundy and his group to go away. If you go out there, we're going to put you in prison sooner. We're going to put you in way less desirable prisons. And then when they wanted to go out and speak to the protesters, they said, if you go out and speak to them, you'll have a bullet in your head. So I think they took him pretty seriously. And that kept a lot of people away.
Somebody gave the order to use deadly force.
Yes, they did.
I wonder who that was.
Gee.
Well, I think there was a pretty clear pecking order there. The other thing I think is important to note is that ostensibly those who are supposedly, and you guys might have discussed this earlier, but ostensibly FBI agents, ostensibly police officers, were actually Blackstone mercenaries that were brought in there to do this deed.
Blackstone or Blackwater?
No, it's Blackstone. It's another one of those risk management companies like Blackwater used to be. They've got a different name now as well. They're called Academy. But Michelle, where's the evidence on Blackwater? I've been hearing that. I know that's the conversation with the common law judge that he had with the provost marshal today. That actually the major in the provost marshal office, I believe his name was Major Bomar. And so
yes.
where have you seen the evidence for,
I saw one video of two clear mercenary individuals with black stocking caps, armed to the hilt, speaking with a reporter, disallowing them from going into the sheriff's office. When asked who they represented, they simply went into their spiel about they were there to protect, and I believe specifically the sheriff. If your name was not on a specific list, you were not allowed to enter the sheriff's office, much less speak with the sheriff. The uniforms they were wearing had no insignias whatsoever. They refused to identify any agency that they're with. And it was very clear, at least to me and the people that I was speaking with at the time, that these guys had been brought in as subcontractors, essentially.
Well, that's who ran the Bundy Ranch standoff. None of them had insignias on. They were all dressed to party, too.
Yep, exactly. So since when is it a crime to want to visit your sheriff and have a humane, decent conversation, or perhaps even put him on the record as a logistical, real journalist should be able to do? But sheriff,
but now, Michelle.
I know. I'm asking rhetorical questions.
At the first town meeting, the first man that got up and defended him, and I knew immediately when he opened his mouth he was an attorney. I mean, they're all in this thick as thieves. He has an appointed sheriff. He's not an elected sheriff. And people in Burns right now are calling for the resignation of the judge and the sheriff.
Exactly.
And in the common law grand jury people that I talked to today said that there will be warrants issued for them.
Well, I hope that I don't doubt that they're going to issue warrants. As far as I understand, that is the plan. What we run up against every time somebody wants to try to take these types of matters into their own hands, which is where the power is, supposedly, is with the people. We run up against enforcement problems every single time.
Well, that's always been my thing. How are you going to enforce it? But the common law person I talked to today said they are working diligently to put that enforcement arm of this in place.
Well, I know that they have engaged conversations with ex-Marines who are supposedly heading there. I've heard this from several sources. Do I have actual documentation other than the people that I trust? No. But you're right. Enforcement has always been the problem. It's always been the problem with situations like Judge Anna puts out there. She writes like a fiend, And I don't disagree with most of her writing, but it does fall upon the point where you can write until you're blue in the face, and without enforcement, without people who are willing to step out of their comfort zone and stand up for what's right and take these bastards down. And sorry if that sounds bad, but it must be done.
Well, that's the nicest word I can use for him, actually.
You know, I named my new radio show Pitchfork Radio because I have pictures in my mind of the ranchers and the farmers taking the pitchforks to the elite and the bourgeoisie and taking them to the shed. And by God, it's about time, and it better start happening.
We get good people in there, Michelle. We wouldn't have to go that far. They wouldn't have to be using that. Everybody should know exactly where the sandbox is and the rules. And once they start breaking the rules and they get slapped on the hand, it's time to start saying, you do it one more time. Our authorities that we've given to the authority we've given to the people to take you down will take you down, and you're going to suffer if you don't back off and do what you're supposed to do is right. And I certainly hope that Hillary Clinton is also included in there along with the rest of them too.
Oh, of course, she's at the top of my list.
Situation. I just pray. I'm not a religious person, hardly any at all. But Loretta Lynch, I hope you do something about this. We can't.
Oh no! Don't look to Loretta Lynch. She's a mobster.
I know that.
Too.
I know that. She's going to be done. She's going to do it. She'll do what she's told to do. But you know what? The light's coming out. You're going to see exactly what kind of cockroaches are sitting there walking around. They're the ones that need to be dealt with too.
Absolutely. I don't even give Hillary, and I just said the name that I refuse to say. I call her Hilda, and she needs to be taken to the shed with the pitchfork about as far up her backside as it can possibly be. And having said that, and I really love the visual when I think about it, it won't take too many of those actually occurring before the people that have been riding on the coattails of all these jackasses start to look twice at their situation.
Yeah, our military.
I think that, there's not much I can say, but I hope people are reading between the lines here, because this is a war, and we need to realize that we're in a war. And I want to bring up this, people that really think that we can elect better people, send better people to Washington. I mean, and I've gone over that. This Iowa caucus thing, for people that don't know, I learned this from people from Iowa that I was involved with the Ron Paul campaign for back in, the first campaign. And I was just stunned when they told me the Iowa caucus isn't even a straw poll. They call in all the results from each precinct are just phoned in. There's it's completely open to election fraud. I mean, vote fraud is rampant there. It means nothing. And so the fact that they were able to, it's just insane that people still think there's a political answer to this. I wish there was. God, I wish there was. I don't see it. Do you mind?
I'm going to say that anybody who walks into an electronic voting machine probably needs to check to see if they have a pulse, because you've got to be totally brain dead if you walk into it.
I have a very good friend whose Facebook page is a guy and a girl, assuming they're boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever. One of them is labeled Republican, one of them is labeled Democrat, and they're both holding hands behind the couch. And it's exactly two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Two wings of the same bird.
Yep. The red snake and the green snake. And how many times have you heard people say, well, I'm going to go hold my nose and vote? Are you kidding me?
I got something to go there with you. If you had two outhouses, one on top of the other, with the politicians labeled on the bottom and the citizens on top, do you think that would work?
Hey, I like it. That's a great visual, Mike. I like it.
I like that one too.
What people have to understand is, and I know all the common law people and the freemen on the land and the sovereign people, they all go crazy when you say citizen. But citizen in this country used to be spelled with a capital C. And we owned the government. The Mexico Constitution is very clear about this. It says the people own the government and the government owns the small c citizens. So it's time for us to throw off these shackles of being 14th Amendment citizens and go back to controlling the government. And they're going to go crazy. I mean, I can't see if we can avoid a bloodbath at this point. I really can't, because this beast is so vicious. And so it's like a wounded beast at this point, and it's going crazy. You can't. It's just insane. So I wish there was a peaceful solution. I hope these common law grand juries can get the full act together and get the enforcement arm of this done. And someone assured me that they were working on it fast and furious today. But other than that, I don't know. But you know what? Death isn't such a bad thing. I really don't fear death at all. I kind of not a big fan of torture, but death, hey, a clean shot in the head, I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think this is just a paper mache world we live in, and we've all been here before. And a friend of mine said something really interesting, and he may be listening tonight, I don't know. But he said something. He said the night, we call it the night of the drone, the night when Stewart Rhodes got real crazy, and they said that there was going to be a drone strike. Someone in the department said there was going to be a drone strike.
At Bundy, right?
I know, that was just so
Yeah.
crazy. You and I were there that night, Michelle.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is he said, he had this kind of epiphany that people keep coming back, that the same 3% keep coming back and keep getting sold out by the same traders. And is this going to keep happening? And now I said that to a friend that's very much more into karma and dharma and understands all this. She's a brilliant South African woman. And she said, oh, yes, I agree with that. But this time it's going to be dharma. I really think we have to get a victorious attitude going here and know that we can take this back. Not because we've got more might, not because we've got more guns, not because we're smarter, but because there's a loving creator in the universe that is got to be at least as heartbroken as we are to see his creation this defiled and disgusting.
Well, I
it's
hope
getting that
so.
way because it's called survival, and that's where it has to go to be able to survive. And by the way, if we're talking about not being afraid of death and stuff like that, would you all mind if I went ahead and had my 72 virgins right now before things get started too much farther down the road?
Oh,
Hey, Mike, good luck finding 72. I think you ought to start in the 4th grade if you don't find virgins these days.
Yeah, I know what that means.
Oh, I'm telling you. Hey, let's talk about Sheriff Palmer for a little bit. And again, I had to call him. I had to call him this week and apologize and say I took the bait for that. And you know what? I called his office and he answered the phone. Hello, Glenn. And I went, whoa. I was impressed, very impressed. And he accepted my apology and he said it was just blown out of proportion, this whole thing. And I go, oh, no, that's not out of proportion. They are still gunning for him.
Yes.
And I mean that seriously. They hate him. Michelle, what do you get to say?
Well, I'm glad we got to the bottom of that, because the way that picture was portrayed in the Oregonian sent us all off on a wild goose chase. And I'm very, very happy to have found what really happened and what the story was. And I will tell you that one of the major reasons that the roadblock was set where it was because they were terrified that these amazing men standing for right were going to make it to meet with Glenn Palmer.
Yeah, absolutely. But they wanted it close enough, and they reported that it happened in his county. I mean, they played everybody perfectly here. Game theory works. I mean, they know how to do this. I feel bad because Lavoie kept saying that, taking his kids, he thought that was asymmetrical warfare. And I said, no, that's not asymmetrical warfare. Asymmetrical warfare is when a smaller foe can take on a larger foe successfully. But that's not what's going on here. It's full spectrum dominance. They had this planned well in advance.
Sure.
And so we still need to really acknowledge that there's plants within the Bundy camp. And we've known that for a long time. I've been very concerned about it. We just see it. And there had to be somebody here that vetted Mark McConnell and set this whole thing up. and I don't think there's been a scratch on his Jeep, and yet, we have to go back and say it's a miracle that those folks survived that
Absolutely.
many gunshots into that car. It's like Bonnie and Clyde. What the heck?
Well, and that is what makes Lavoie even a greater hero, was because he was going to draw that fire away from the car.
Yeah. Well, one of our friends in the Skype room here, she said, reports of Blackwater, a Blackstone mercenary in Burns, Oregon, Merckx in Harney County, and it's a YouTube video, and I don't have any way to. It'll take me too long to get over to the chat room. But look at reports of Blackwater or Blackstone mercenaries in Burns, Oregon, Merckx in Harney County.
That might be the one that I saw. It sounds like the one that I saw.
Okay. Yep. So people are looking to see that because that's what they're using. So why do they use these people and not your rank and file, special FBI agent, special agent in charge? What's the difference? Why do they need these people?
I've got a theory. You want to hear it?
Yeah, hell yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. These people are almost without exception former soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the place where they're, Syria, where they're dealing with these kind of outrageous imperialistic tactics. These men have been so brainwashed into the energy of war that when they come home, they beg to go back because life is too mundane, and they're so used to the adrenaline high, and they're so used to the energy of the conflict that
the taste for blood.
Absolutely. And then they come back and they're supposed to be able to assimilate back into normal society, and many of them are not able to. These are the ones that are being rehired by the IMF and these contractor companies to infiltrate the ranks of the police, the military, the FBI, etc.
Sure. It's interesting. Jim Cole, the IRS agent that's just torturing him for the last 4 years. He asked him, well, what'd you do before you're an IRS agent? He said, oh, I was a sniper.
Go figure.
Yeah.
Figuratively now, but literally then.
In another thing that I think is sad about the Patriot movement, that we have so many men, veterans, that have post-traumatic stress disorder and brain injuries and things like that. So there's another loose cannon part of the Patriot movement.
Sure. And not to mention the fact that these guys have had, 42 vaccines before they go overseas? And you can tie in all the toxins associated with the vaccines to their PTSD, their inability to function in normal society. They're so toxic.
Exactly. And then the aluminum that we're sprayed with every day. I mean, it doesn't make for healthy, well-balanced people. Mike, what do you think?
I demand my 72 virgins now. I think we're halfway there.
Yeah.
Now,
Good luck with that, man.
You're hitting right on the target. But what happens is this was a political ambush and an assassination attempt for everybody in those cars. That was the ones in the truck. That's obvious what happened. But here
make no mistake about it. These people are political prisoners.
Well, the Bundys have the good intentions, okay? But this is not what it's all about. It's all about the uranium underneath that ground. Don't lose sight of that. It's all about the money.
It's all about the IMF. Exactly.
It's all about the $162 million that went into the Clinton Foundation. That's one of the parts of the problem right there. People being bought out from underneath itself. They don't care about anybody else. They just want that damn money.
Yeah.
And don't lose track of that, because if you look around all the farmers, all the ranchers out there. I got clients that sit out there in Wyoming. The same thing's happening to them. It's all about the money. And I will tell you also that 1/3 of this country has already been bought out by the Chinese. I don't think people are aware of that either.
Okay, well let's talk for a minute. Let's try to end on some good news here.
Okay.
Because it's so disgusting. In man, it's a full-time job, and I just want to thank everybody that sends me great stuff to stay ahead of this, because honestly, you can't get, just keeping up with this is a full-time job. But I really, my hat's off to Governor Herbert, Gary Herbert of Utah, and they've been working on that Western Lands Bill to take the lands back. And I know the Bundys were always against that. They thought it was the wrong way to go about it, but the right way to go about it, they got completely shut down by the, the legislative, the powers that behind that. And so I'm my hat's off to them. And I understand that other states are following suit. They've had it with the Fed. So, I mean, hopefully the states will be able to call out some people. It's not going to just be militia, that they're going to have some military force that they can use to get these creeps out of our states. What do you think?
I don't know. I have hopes for it, but when you're using one government entity to go up against another government entity, and both of those governments are actually corporations, I don't know. I'm concerned about that approach.
Yeah, I see that, but the states goes to gain a lot of money, but again, that's what it comes back to. We have to get back to de jure governments.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then have that, because they're going to spend like $280 million to fight the feds on this, but they're going to reap $328 million. So there's certainly, and that's every state that could be having this money.
You mean that toilet paper that we call this fiat currency?
Oh, Michelle, come on.
I'm sorry. I'm just
there you go with that reality talk again. No, but this is real. This is real money. This is what's under the ground, what we really produce. It's not the paper money. These are real assets that we're talking here.
Commodities, hard assets.
Hard assets, because the land without people on it is pretty worthless. It's only when we get out there and we have that partnership with nature that anything happens. Agriculture is really the only true wealth. It's
Absolutely.
it's the thing that's most like God, that you plant seeds and that you get a harvest. It's absolutely amazing. And the fact that these people have taken us so far away from the earth and expect it, herded us into cities where we don't know what's going on. So the boss is telling, hold on, I got to let people know what's going on tomorrow. And I just have to say, we're sending some well wishes out to our friend Terry Joy. She's on her way here. She had a problem. We've got other folks, Californians coming up, and there's a whole bunch of people going up to Lavoy Finicum's funeral tomorrow. It's going to be in Kanab, Utah, and we're going to be doing a live feed from there, God willing. And I think we're okay because Terry has Verizon. Unless they shut off the cell towers like they do, we should be able to broadcast from there. Of course, we're not going to be broadcasting the funeral. That would be disrespectful to the Finicums, and we would never do anything like that. But there'll be a horse procession. There'll be a lot of people there, and we'll be bringing you a live report from there tomorrow. And it should start, the live report, we expect it to be about 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock Mountain Time, which is 9 o'clock Pacific, noon time back east, and figure out what else. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And Michelle, before we run out of time here, let people know where they can find your new podcast.
Well, the YouTube channel is called Pitchfork Radio. My first guest was Jim Willey, who's the world-renowned forecaster and economist. I am absolutely flabbergasted. We're at almost 9,000 views, which is just mind-blowing to me. But I guess it was a good way to start the show.
Awesome. Good job. So, Mike, you want to finish this up? I mean, I'm rounding up some virgins for you right now, but you have any parting thoughts?
You're going to be quite a while, I'm sure. But this has been a real treat. Thank you very much for the invitation. I also want to let everybody know that don't take your eyes off the uranium situation. It's there. It's going to be there for quite a while, and other resources are trying to get their hands on. Don't forget the radiation coming over from Fukushima either, okay? That's also
All right,
a
hey,
big,
you guys
big
keep talking
issue.
for a minute. I've got Californians at the door. It's not
Okay,
like
terrific.
barbarians at the gate, just Californians at the door. So hold on while I let them in. You guys
bet.
keep talking till the music. I'll try to be back before then.
And I would like to say, Michelle, it's been really nice being with you tonight. And for all the listeners, I personally would like to wish everybody health, happiness, and a safe journey through life.
Mike, I would like to add to your warning about the radiation. Not too long ago, there was an update about the methane leak in California, in LA County. Apparently, deep in the groundwater, they're finding radioactivity that's being released with the methane. And again,
the methane leak, Michelle, that is like such a blackout topic. So few people are talking about that.
Well, by
it's
design,
a huge environmental disaster.
Of course it is, and they're very concerned that areas of LA County are going to be uninhabitable. And the really sad thing is that this could have been solved in September when they first found it. But of course, it's part of the push people off the land storyline that we've been talking about all night.
It's called depopulation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Will be a whole lot easier to control if there's a whole lot less of us. Absolutely. But I just want to say this is my hobby horse lately, that we create our reality, and that's why the media likes to control the message so heavily, because they don't want us to think for ourselves. And I really believe that quantum physics tells us this, and we must really start. I'm going to get that meditation together that I promised everyone, so we can start seeing liberty and justice for all again, and really creating what we want here. Because
Absolutely.
What we resist persists. And so instead of resisting these people, we really need to create what we want.
Agreed. And if our focus is on the negativity all the time, it draws down the energy upon which they feast.
Exactly. And our anger and stuff, it's absolutely incredible. So I just want to send love to the Finicum family and the Bundys, everybody that's being held, and wish all the patriots that are on their way to Utah tomorrow Godspeed, and say to get there safe. And Michelle and I are going to be the ones on the live stream tomorrow, so we'll be looking forward to that. And next week we're going to be talking common law, and it's the man's name is now I'm having a blackout there. Oh my gosh! But anyway, we'll be talking with the common law grand juries, with a common law judge, and really get an update on when they can expect to have some enforcement in place on all of this. Because I know they issued an arrest warrant, they call it an order, for the shooters. And so it should be very interesting. The update that the Finicums gave today, based on Shauna Cox's information, was excellent. And I don't think they're going to go quietly into the night either. And so it's on. That's all we can say. It's on. I don't think this was a flash in the pan of freedom. I believe that this is setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, and that we're not free Americans anymore, and that's what we have to show people, that it's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
Breaker 19.
Okay, Breaker 19. Okay, very good. Hey, thanks everybody. And we'll see y'all next week.
Breaker 19. I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to I bet for an hour trying to squeeze in here, Patty.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know what Breaker 19 was. So, okay, what's your 20, Hawk? That's the only truck talk I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, don't forget we'll be live, from Utah tomorrow. But not only that, I want everybody to. It's Weaponized Talk Radio, youtube.com users. Weaponized Talk Radio is it, and it's Revolution Radio. We'll be there tomorrow, and I think everybody needs to go back and look at the video and listen to the video before this one, because we had an actual government contract agent sent out there by Joint Terrorist Task Force that called in and gave the lowdown, and he found himself disgusted with what's going on. And I think it's important that you get back there and listen to that, and and get and look at the other side of this, because this dude was actually, according to him, and we looked at his background. He seemed, in my opinion, it seems trustable. But
well, we know
it is the internet. It is the internet.
Yeah. Well, the internet is getting less and less productive, but we know there were contractors at Bundy Ranch and that were under contract for three attacks, and and some of them grew a conscience because they would believe that it was Waco and these people were anti-Americans or whatever, and so they were out there and did that. But afterwards, when they saw the news, they backed off. So let's pray for these people's humanity, connect with them, and connect with their hearts. Someone's asking, who are these people? Well, I just want to say, Michelle Johnson joined us in the second hour. Mike from the Carolinas.
I had 1 minute, and I had a finishing point that we need to get out. Go back and look at that.
Okay,
go. And it's too late now. I'll talk to you later.
Take the last minute. You're good. Oh, we're gone already. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Good night.
Au revoir.
Listening to Revolution Radio.